Hell, fellow Rotarians, and honored guests, both here in the room and on the Zoom. Well, it's this month's Seattle Rotary Spotlight Member of the Month is once again classified as a champion, but with over 44 years of Rotary membership, unfortunately, champion, that seems like such an inadequate term to describe him. His life spans so much history and critical events in our country's past that, coupled with his achievements, it's nothing less than inspirational. He, on the other hand, he'll just tell you it was serendipity. Now, you make up your own mind. Tom Hayward is the Seattle Rotary Spotlight Member of the Month for September. Tom was born in 1924 in Glendale in Southern California. He grew up in the hard times of the Great Depression. He had an older brother named Bill, a younger sister named Bunny. Unfortunately, Tom's mother left when he was very young, and it left Tom's father, Payson, to raise his children as a single parent during the most economically depressed time in our country's history. Tom's father took any job he could that would bring money into the family, and Tom saw firsthand what it means to take responsibility in life. The family lived in the attic of Tom's grandparents' home, and Tom never really knew how poor he was because of his father, who also just happened to be, if I can make this work, spotlight there, forward there. There he is, Tom's father, probably the most handsomest man in the early 1900s. He was also a proud patriot of World War I. Eventually, Tom's dad remarried to a wonderful woman named Dorothy, or as the family called her, Dee. Tom described Dee as a great lady who truly completed their family. Now, Tom grew up happy in California. Here's a copy of his third grade photo. Kind of looks like a casting call for the latest Little Rascals movie, doesn't it? See, there's a little alfalfa over there on the right. Can you pick out Tom? Smiling kid in the back row. He loved Boy Scouts. He loved Sea Scouts. Here's a photo of him with early days of sailing on the open water with his brother Bill. I may be wrong, but I think a young pubescent JFK may have seen this photo. Got some ideas for some photos of his own that would later aid in his political campaign. Tom graduated high school in 1942, just as war was starting to break out. After a short stint in college, Tom enlisted in the Navy, signed up for naval aviation. His dream was to become a fighter pilot, but then came the first serendipitous opportunity, as Tom likes to call it. His flight instructor saw something special in Tom. They signed him up to apply to the Annapolis Naval Academy. Now, whatever they saw in Tom, Tom did not know what they were talking about. He was no A+ student. In fact, he was average at best. He reviewed the requirements of the entrance exam, saw there was a section on chemistry. He had never had a chemistry class in his life. So now he could bail on this opportunity. He could keep on flying, which is what he loved. Or he could go buy some books on chemistry, read up on them for the exam, which is what he did. And he passed the entrance exam and ended up graduating from Annapolis. Oh, in fact, he graduated in the top 10% of his class. And did I mention he was only 18 years old? Now, is that serendipitous or embracing opportunity? After graduation in 1948, Tom was assigned to sea as a black shoe engineering officer aboard the aircraft carrier USS Antietam. It was also during this time that he married the love of his life and his greatest supporter, his wife, Peggy. And after finally winning his wings of gold as a fighter pilot, he was assigned to Fighter Squadron 51 stationed out of San Diego. The Korean War broke out, and it was time for Tom to take to the sky and fly for his country. He did 2 11-month tours and flew 146 missions. Among his squadron mates with whom he would fly combat was a fellow pilot by the name of Neil Armstrong. He'd later achieve his own matter of fame. Now, although he and his fellow pilots racked up some incredible assault records, his greatest record during this period was the birth of his 2 daughters, Colleen and Cindy. The Korean War also gave me a chance to get to know the real Tom Hayward a little better. He was flying support for a photography plane when he took a huge hit to his wing, cutting out his electronics and his hydraulics. His engine started to sputter. He knew he was going down. And he did not want to go down in North Korea. He radioed to the other plane that he had to turn around and try and make it back to South Korea. Now, he made it. And all he had to do was bail out, send that plane into the water, crash land in open field. I asked him what he did. And he said, well, he had a responsibility to the military to try and protect the asset, the plane. So at the risk of his own life, he attempted to flatland the plane with no running gear. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say he attempted? He succeeded. He walked away. Here he is. Tom was and always has been a military career man. He was not in it for a few years. His relationship with his employer, the Navy, is unlike any relationship us corporate Americans can understand. I can't think of one asset any employer of mine ever had that I would risk my life for. But Tom did. After the war, Tom started his career as a Navy test pilot, helping the Navy test and perfect the new aircraft for deployment. After one of his fellow test pilots was a really, really nice guy by the name of John Glenn, and Tom could not be happier that he was the first man to orbit the Earth. Finally, at the end of 1959, serendipity steps in again, and Tom, now a lieutenant commander, is assigned to the Pentagon to work for John Connally, the Secretary of the Navy. 6 months later, John Connally resigns to successfully run for governor of Texas. Tom steps into the role for 6 months on an interim basis until a new Secretary of the Navy can be assigned. Serendipitous or rising to the occasion? Tom is then promoted to executive assistant to the Undersecretary of the Navy, John Warner. Then the Vietnam War breaks out, and Tom's country needs him again. He returns to sea, and of course he goes. First, he takes the sky. He flies numerous combat missions until 1969, when he takes command of the USS attack carrier America as a captain, which ultimately leads to his being promoted to Rear Admiral. In 1975, Vice Admiral Hayward assumes command of the 7th Fleet. And a year or so later, Admiral Hayward, now a 4-star, serves as Commander-in-Chief of the U.S. Pacific Fleet. And finally, in 1978, serendipity steps in again, and something happens to Tom that he never aspired to. Admiral Tom Hayward becomes the Chief of Naval Operations and a member of the Joint Chiefs. As great an honor as this was, it was probably one of the greatest challenges he faced. In the late 70s, the U.S. military, after years of combat, Vietnam combat and budget cuts, was faced with outdated, obsolete, and ineffective equipment. That also led to significant morale issues and a growing drug problem. Tom's 4 years were marked by a surge in pride and professionalism within the ranks, an increase in fleet readiness, and a bold zero-tolerance drug policy that stopped and all but eliminated a growing problem in its tracks. Yeah, sometimes a serendipitous opportunity is really a serendipitous challenge. You either accept it and you rise to it, which is what he did. A number of years after retirement from the Navy, Tom and Peggy moved to Seattle. Now, although he had joined Rotary in Hawaii in 1977, it was with the support from another great Seattle Rotarian, Herb Bridge, that Tom joined Seattle Rotary almost 20 years ago. During retirement, Tom never slowed down, having founded and funded 4 educational companies. He saw many opportunities to help disadvantaged youth and seek to fix education. Companies such as the American College of Education academic partnerships with numerous state universities to help them provide online courses several years before it's becoming a now common educational tool. Tom and Peggy enjoyed their golden years together. And when I thanked him for his service, he told me the ones to thank are the spouses like Peggy, who supported Tom throughout his career. Unfortunately, later in life, Peggy fell victim to the challenges of Alzheimer's. Tom was there to support her as she had been there to support him. Tom lost his beloved Peggy a few years ago. Tom Hayward is renowned for his leadership in times of war and times of peace. He is respected as an exceptional individual in the service of his country, his family, and his community. It is with great humility and great honor that I present to you the Seattle Rotary Spotlight Member of the Month for September 2021, a true patriot. Stand up, Tom. Tom Hayward, classification, retired military.